The Joint Senate Committee on Finance, Banking, Insurance and Financial Institutions on Friday, February 9, held an interactive session with Nigeria's economic management team, including officials of the Central Bank of Nigeria led by the Governor, Yemi Cardoso, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy, Wale Edun, Mr. Atiku Bagudu, the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, and the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Abubakar Kyari. The ministers and CBN Governor were summoned amidst concerns around Nigeria's economic condition. Let's take a listen.
I can assure us here that in the medium term, the set of measures that have been taken to improve revenue, starting with oil revenue, which gives both dollars and naira and is the key in the very short term to having a boost to the economy. To non-oil revenue, domestic revenue, major tax reforms are underway, not to increase the rate of tax, but to improve. Senators, you yourselves admonished us to ensure that the revenue that is due to the Consolidated Revenue Fund is brought in judiciously, efficiently, and on a timely manner. That is being done using technology. Expenditure, we are looking at ensuring that government expenditure is carefully spent. Even Mr. President has reduced his own expenditure. And so, for the medium term, let us be assured that the monetary and the fiscal policies which are being implemented are going to lead to increase in production, increased funding for the government to play its own role. And I would just like to say that just yesterday, Mr. President hosted, amongst other people, the Managing Director Operations of the World Bank. And the message was, she had just come from Turkey, just come from another, because she covers the whole world. And it is the same everywhere. Difficult reforms take time for the benefits to come through. And our duty is to ensure that in the short term we minimize the pains to the poor and the most vulnerable.
Just to even add further to what the coordinating minister brilliantly said, that the managing director even said that one of the experiences, particularly from Turkey, was how do you ensure that you don't lose some of the stakeholders while the lag of the economic reforms are taking time to have a positive effect. And then equally, because again, this came up yesterday in another meeting, and it has been touched upon here. And from our perspective, particularly from budget and planning, is material. There are places today in about states in the country where you can still plant rice for the dry season farming. But including the constituency of the respected chairman of the national planning in 5 local government offices, but where if care is not taken, not for reasons of insecurity, 70% of the planted area might not to be planted because of fuel cost. Fuel. And the same thing in the constituency of respected my brother, Senator Adamu Aleru, and I'm sure in a number of places.
On the issue of food security in itself is the availability, affordability, and accessibility of food. Today we have a challenge of affordability of food and also availability in some cases. Partly, like other speakers have mentioned, we have been challenged over a period of quite some time since COVID COVID has an impact on agriculture, like in all other sectors. At the same time, if you remember the flooding of 2021, 2022, and also the Naira redesign of 2022, 2023. Just at the point of harvest in 2022, government came out with a policy of change of Naira, and that really impacted on the availability of cash. In 2023 early, farmers, when they were just preparing for planting in 2023, had no cash whatsoever anywhere. And access to capital for farmers is very key, and there was no access for farmers. And in addition, an exiting government, I don't want to say this much, but an exiting government did not plan to do the cultivation, wet season cultivation for 2023. I don't think there was any impact or any direct intervention by government against the 2023 cultivation. And that also impacted on the quantum of harvest that we had in 2023. We have not had any harvest since the one in 2023 up till now. But we have had two programs. One is the wheat program that we have done, in which Jiga has impacted a lot, and all 14 other states. But the rice, second phase of rice that we're just about to roll out now is being challenged as well in terms of fuel, in terms of even inputs.
There was a lot of buzz on the social media. Oh, he's saying this, that he's saying he doesn't want. That's not my point. The market will always determine what is what. But I do believe that if we are able to up our game in the area of medical, education, the need for people to go abroad and spend so much money will not arise. It will not. And I must also say that I was very encouraged also by some very top people in the private sector who I don't even know from anywhere, and who sent me messages to say, look, we heard your statement, and we went back to think that maybe the way we as an enterprise are embracing foreign products and perhaps, the need to go and do certain to go and spend certain amounts of money in foreign countries, we can do the same thing here. We don't have to every time get up and go to the UK or to the United States. Let's put together a committee to start saying, well, look, how do we moderate these things? How do we moderate them? Because every single one has a responsibility, and no amount is too small.
Well, you were just listening to Yemi Cardoso, governor of the central bank, at a committee hearing in the Nigerian Senate on many things, including the dollar situation. I'm joined now by Arise business anchor and anchor of Global Business Report, Rotus Odirri. He's going to help me unpack some of the key takeaways. He's been hailed here in the studio. You're a superhero.
I wish. Good morning.
Great to have you as a guest.
Good to be on the show. We're swapping now.
I know
we
are.
GBR and
we are.
Great stuff. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thanks for coming in. So let's start with some of the things that Yemi Cardoso said, which I think to some extent in the media this week was misinterpreted. The whole issue of us needing to quench our thirst and hunger for dollars. What was he really trying to say there?
Cardoso openly discussed the dynamics of demand and supply. And it was a balanced presentation to the House of Reps.
Earlier in the week.
Earlier in the week, he goes, look, there's a demand side to this and supply. And he emphasized the fact that if we do not produce enough dollars, you won't be able to defend your currency, and you will not be able to meet the demand for things like medical services, for things like education, and he was, I'm glad he reacted to that, because people were misinterpreting what he said. Some folks were running around saying he's blaming students for going overseas and blaming. No, that wasn't the case. So it was a supply issue. That was his main emphasis.
Yeah, but I mean, you think it's a supply issue. It's an issue of our demand for dollars. But it's going to take all Nigerians, really, everybody, corporates, private individuals, to switch their entire orientation away from a dollar-driven economy. What are some of the critical and fundamental things that would even need to start to happen?
Okay, well, I don't want to get on the whole, buy Nigeria to grow the Naira thing, but it is a point that some folks have made. But okay, fundamentally, you have to produce more here, right? I'm struggling to find anything electronic in this studio that was made in this country, even down to this table that we're sitting at. So the thing is, how do you domesticize your production? How do you do that? You've got to have power, that's my thing I've been emphasizing all week, all month, since the year started, since last year. Power, power, power. You've got to get power. Once you get power, then folks can start to produce things. And then you've got to, there's also the matter of skills, right? You've got to have a skilled workforce, and you don't get a skilled workforce unless you have an educated workforce. So there's so many things that have to be put in place there. So, but if we produce items here, then we export those items, including value-added goods, not raw materials.
For them.
There it is.
Absolutely. I mean, we could go on that, but I want us to focus on some of the other things that were said. Earlier in the week, he had the exclusive interview with our own colleague, Bosan Mofaye, and he talked about the $2.4 billion, which were, he said it was claims that had been investigated by Deloitte, who had done an audit on those claims, and some of them had come across as, questionable. Can you tell us a bit about what he was trying to get there?
So basically, what he was saying is, we went through all those claims that were put forward to say, hey, I want to repatriate dollars out of your country. I've done this and that and that and this. This is the form that I'm putting forward. And what he said was that they got a third party, extra eyes, which, interestingly enough, when you look at the NNPCL and the fact that the presidency has directed that revenues going through NNPC should be going to the CBN, a domiciled account with the CBN. So the CBN now becomes this extra pair of eyes to look at revenue flowing from the NNPCL. He was referring to Deloitte being that extra pair of eyes. And some of the claims, he said, were unfounded. So now it is up to the firms and entities that put those forms forward to say, okay, this is the proof that we have that it is legitimate. So now it's on. The onus is now back to them. So he's not saying it was the CBN that said, oh, we're trying to, because here's what some folks in some circles were saying. They were essentially saying that the CBN is trying to delegitimize some of these claims so they can back out of not having to pay.
Ease the burden of having to meet
by
obligations.
just lopping off $2.4 billion.
That would be highly unlikely.
Right, which is why they brought in Deloitte and say we've got a credible third party to review these things.
An objective third party.
So now it's you come back and you tell us that, oh, Deloitte is wrong and these claims are legit.
I mean, before we get on to some of the other things that were said at the Senate hearing, if you look at all the gamut of policies and pronouncements that have come out of CBN, in your realistic assessment, are we going to get to stability soon in the FX market?
We will get to stability. I don't know about this soon. So the thing is, the moves that they made have been solid. The net open positions for the banks to try to reduce them speculating. The IMTOs, I really like that, letting them quote whatever rates they want. And then, of course, there was also another circular saying that now you can't get dollars through the IMTOs. They're going to be converted in Naira.
But at the prevailing market rate.
Thank you. The rate closed at 1,469 yesterday. I think the black market rate is, I don't know, 1,483 or 85, but there's a difference of like 15, 20 Naira. So that gap is narrowing. So what you've done is to try to bring some transparency, some stability to the market. Whether it happens, for stability to happen, we're back to the supply issue.
Of course.
If an entity overseas in Germany or Guyana, wherever, says, okay, now I feel like I can start sending money through to Nigeria because the CBN is stabilizing, that now is the next domino or the next shoe that needs to drop. Whether it will happen soon, I'm not sure because we're still in that transition phase where price discovery and all that. But the government has made
Do you think he reassured the Senate?
Hey, you know what? Great question. And this brings me to another point. I think some of those questions from those senators, I have to say. But I think what we've seen this week from addressing the National Assembly, I didn't even know they were addressing the Senate. I remember I was in the newsroom and they said, oh, they're talking. And I was like, again? I was like, are we playing the format? So I like the fact that they've come out and repeatedly spoken to senators because inadvertently you're speaking to Nigerians. And they've been saying the same thing over and over again. So that not only reassures the senators, more importantly, it reassures foreign investors that, look, Nigeria is
And of
trying to
course,
do
the
right
key is
thing.
consistency of messages and communication. I feel like the CBN has communicated more in the last week than in like the past year.
Plus our
or more.
exclusive interview as well with Arise News. So you got to keep,
that's
you got to
a
keep
good
talking.
thing.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit, before we go, I want to talk a bit about the agriculture minister and some of the things he said around food security and the fact that the legacy that this present administration had been left with by the previous one was causing some of the supply chain constraints and challenges we have in that space. What was your take on that?
You see, again, the fact that they brought these members of the economic team to come out and speak. I've never heard Kyari speak. When I say Kyari, I'm not mixing him up with NNPCL's.
Abubakar Kyari.
Yes, for the agriculture minister. Never heard him speak in public. I know he's had functions and other things, but this was the first time I saw him address. I thought he was very sound. I thought he spoke in plain English and properly, domicile the issues that we're facing with food security. I would like the fact that he brought up some of the smuggling going on because the CEFA is now so much stronger than
the regional West African currency for the Francophone states.
Thank you. Which now means that if you're holding CEFA, Nigerian food items become really cheap, and you can now, get some of those over the border. So he talked about that. Plus, like Cardozo, Minister Kyari said that we've got to ramp up food supplies. And I have to quickly shout out, I've been doing this all week, Waziri Adio, This Day newspaper columnist, who had a back page article last Sunday where he said, look, you got to, for now, remove tariffs on wheat, sugar, rice, and so on and so forth. Try to reduce those temporarily to improve food coming into the country. So FX, food, those are the top, I think, issues, and insecurity as well. But I thought the agricultural minister, I thought he was
and
very
of course,
sound.
if food is being smuggled out, then it's causing shortages here in our domestic market, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, and then there's also the issue of price. There's also the issue of how insecurity is stopping farmers from being able to go to the farms. I mean, he really hit on the right note.
Now the question is what they would do about it. One of the things that really struck me, he talked about the fact that Nigeria has 70 million hectares of land that can be cultivated. How do we bridge that gap between what's available and what can be harnessed to feed the nation?
Okay, I want to go to Europe now, just real quick. We've been really covering the strikes going on, the farmers' protests going on in France, Spain, Luxembourg, Germany. They blocked roads in some of the highways over in France and in other areas because the farmers are saying they want more subsidies because food prices are going up and so on, their inputs and so on and so forth. If you see the footage, and we've been covering it, they were tractors, just tractors across the freeways. Just every farmer had a tractor.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I was just looking
That's
at it.
incredible.
They blocked the entire. So I was like, if you in Nigeria. And they're complaining that their own yields are not even high enough.
Even with technology and mechanized agriculture.
Right, so how much more us, right?
Indeed.
So you got to get mechanized farming here. You've got to get it to scale. Now, of course, how much is a tractor now with where exchange rates are? How most of our farmers are subsistence farmers where they're just growing food to feed themselves. So can they, do they have the training to be able to operate these machines? So mechanized farming is the way forward, and the issue with irrigation, climate change, plus flooding, and all these other issues, which the minister again touched on as well. That's where we got to go. That's where we have to go.
So I mean, a lot was said. Wale Edun also spoke. He talked about interventions. He also talked about the tax issue. Of course, we know that there are no new taxes. In 2024, I remember, was it Reagan that said, read my lips, no new taxes, famous last words.
Exactly.
But hopefully, I mean, that's probably a political decision. But if we look at the revenue side of, Nigeria's economy, what is the critical thing we need to do now amidst all these other policy reforms to boost our revenue?
It's our commonwealth, it's oil. Our RISE business analyst Chika Mbono, who's a regular on the Global Business Report, has said that President Tinubu has declared a state of emergency in food. He says declare a state of emergency in the oil sector. They've been seizing ships, all these ships that are illegally carrying oil. They'll burn them, they'll make a big show of it. Our cameras will go there and capture it. Who's being prosecuted? The budget, 2024 budget, is calling for 1.78 million barrels per day.
Yeah.
Third quarter last year, we did 1.4. The prior quarter two, we did 1.2. There was a point in time we fell below 1 million barrels per day. So you've got to ramp that up in order to get your dollar revenues in order to ramp up revenues for the country.
Yeah, crude oil is short term. It's really I'll get
Although
out
I
of
heard
jail
you
card.
discussing electric vehicles in the prior segment.
Well, that's
with the
Ethiopia.
Esther.
They're taking
exactly.
a really radical
So
step.
we got to diversify.
Rotus, thank you so much. You know, talking about Nigerian economic issues, you often have to come up for air. Otherwise, you'll run out of breath because we could say so much more. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, my pleasure.
Really lovely to have you.
Fantastic.
Please come back.
Certainly.
Well, you've been watching me have a discussion there with Rotus Odirri, anchor of Global Business Report on Arise, on the Senate committee hearings with the economic policy team. So much going good for Nigeria, but there's still a lot of work to do. Let's continue the conversation online. Stay safe and have a great weekend ahead. I'm Rola Keakin-Gwe-Filani, and I'll see you next time.